Hey guys, welcome to the Trooper Mentality Podcast. This is the first of many in this fashion. I'm your host, Prince, and the co-host, of course, is Noble Life. And then we have our two guests, which actually work with us, two coaches, Coach JoJo and Coach Erica. What's up, guys? How's everybody doing? Good. Awesome. All right, so we're the name of this podcast is Trooper Mentality. We're gonna start off with a quote. We usually do that with class. We do that with our, just as a whole. We always start with the mentality. So the quote that's gonna kind of set the tone for us actually ties into our main topic. And this quote comes from Coretta Scott King. Hate is too great a burden to bear. It injures the hater more than it injures the hated. So that's what we're kicking it off with. And the topic today is equality. What is equality, right? I think we all have different different perceptions from different angles about what equality actually is, as it pertains to racism, as it pertains to sexism, as it pertains to a lot of things, so socioeconomic, there's so many different things. But I want to hear from you. Let's start with our guests. I'll start from Erica. You're furthest away from me in the square. So Erica, what do you think equality means?
For me, equality just means equality in rights, opportunities, income, and just a state of being equal. Like, it's that simple for the definition to me.
But what is equal? You can't, right? What is so good? So, income. But what would be even like the same amount of income, the same amount of like, what does that look like? What does the equal world look like with those things?
No, everyone being able to have the same opportunities without discrimination, without difference of pay, just dependent on if we were all blobs, and it just had to do with energy output and input.
There you go. Okay. What you think, JoJo?
Yeah, I agree with Erica. I think it's the same. I think it's just as simple as that. I think also, like, in terms of respect of opinions and voice, I think that's part of it too.
Okay. And Noble Life, what do you think equality means?
I think in just plain definition, equality means to just for everybody to kind of have an even playing field, no matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, no matter your sex, your sexual orientation, that you can be afforded the same opportunities as somebody else. Now, for me, I feel like the idea of equality is a little tricky because there's always this funny graphic. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's depicted through like somebody trying to grab like an apple tree, and it's like the difference between equity, equality, and justice. So I'm not sure how much
yeah. I said you went there. That's exactly what I was going to refer to.
So I'm not sure if I honestly really like the idea of equality. I mean, I looked up the definition and it says the state of being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. It's easy to oppress somebody for hundreds of years, and then let's give everybody equal playing ground. We're just gonna allow everybody, but that doesn't really like tell the full story, So I mean, I do think the idea of equality is a good starting point. It's a good conversation starter, and like I said, it's just really everybody being afforded the same opportunities. That's like the bare minimum. But I'm not sure how much of a fan I am of the idea of just equality.
Right. Just this guy. Well, what do you mean? So, and I'll kind of chime in on my opinion, but you say you're not sure if you're a fan of the idea. Is there an alternative? That I think that's where the.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I wish I honestly had the graphic in front of me, but let's say if equality is, if we're both reaching for an apple tree, and for years the tree has been leaning towards your size, equality would be making the tree straight so that we can each pick apples at an equal stance, right? But for me, it's like if you've had 10 to 20 years of picking apples on your side leaning, I feel like the tree should lean towards my side now. I feel like that's the alternative, is that like I'm more of like a justice person. It's like, and it could be, and you got to be careful with it because it could turn you like almost like angry or cold. But I'm of the mind, if somebody's had advantages over me for 10 years, if you want it to be truly equal, if you really want my life to be equal to yours, then you need to give me those same advantages over you for 10 years. And then in that 10 years, we'll finally be equal. You know what I mean?
Got you. Okay.
That's how
I've seen that little image too. And I think like one of the examples was that like, it's kind of like our system right now. Like if the tree is leaning and then like they don't fix the actual tree. It's just like they give the other side like a stepping stool or something instead of like actually fixing the tree. And I think that was or that was one of the like images I saw, and that made sense. Like you're not fixing the actual issue, you're just kind of like giving out like this solution that doesn't actually solve anything.
That's actually, I never seen that particular graphic, but that makes sense. The one I saw was, I guess, was probably the previous one that came from. The one that I saw was like two people trying to see a game, and there's a fence, and there's a tall person and a short person, and one person has there's like, let's say there's 3 boxes, and I have, or if I'm taller and let's say Noble, you're shorter, and I'm super tall, I could see over the fence already, and you have a box and I have a box, I should give you both of the boxes so that you can see and we both can see. And they were saying that that's equality, but then is it equality? It's not really equality. I think that's what you're talking about equity versus equality, like getting things to an equal place versus us having equal shares.
Yeah, I think equality, like you said, I mean, that wouldn't really be equality. That would be like equity or like justice or doing the morally right thing. Equality is just the fact that both of you have a box, because the tall person could look at it, just to play, I mean, not devil's advocate, but the tall person could be like, well, we both have a box. Why should I give you my box just because you happen to be short? Like, is that my fault? I think that's where these analogies get tricky, because obviously what we're really comparing it to, it is the other party's fault. So, but I definitely understand, people saying that, like, why should I have to give up my privileges just because you're less privileged?
Right. Cool, but it's the same to the person that didn't get the apples for all those years. It's like, oh, now that you're leaning it so it's even, that's still not fair for all of the, like, you had so much catching, like I have so much catching up to do to even get to your, like, to get to your level for it to be equal yet. So it's really tricky.
Right. So here's my and listen, I'm not coming in here as an expert. I may be the host, but I'm not an expert. No one is really, I think, in this scenario. I don't think, and allow me to be raw when I say this, and because right now we're all playing real safe and we'll talk about this, but I don't think true equality exists, period. I think equality is an ideal that we should, as a community, and when I say community, I mean, there's many communities, but as communities, we should strive towards constantly fixing and working towards equality. But I don't think there is an actual equality in this world. There's too much things going on. If I get real technical, I think gravity, like, I don't think there's always going to be benefits, pros and cons to every trait that you have: height, race, sex, and stuff like that. Now, as far as there being in a system, I think what people talk about is a system leaning towards favoring a particular set of traits. And we want to fix that. But even then, I think it's almost impossible to be completely equal. But again, that doesn't mean that I don't think we should strive towards it. I just think that the conversation will go on forever.
Yeah, I think even you asking our definition of equality doesn't mean that we all believe that it's happening. You just told us what we think it's supposed or what it means, but we're not saying that's necessarily possible or what is going on or what we believe in.
Facts. So I guess to be fair, I should say what I think equality is too, which I think it's for things to be. I think it's an ideal. I think it's an ideal that does not exist. I think it is. I think what we said, like, it's equal pay, equal height. I think you can't really create equality. I think it's an ideal, it's an abstract idea to me, because I'm such by nature, I'm such a technical person that if you say something, I'm gonna break it down and really dissect it. And I think you can give people equal, for example, equal pay. And I'm not gonna go race and Jen uses my wife, Jen, you guys know Jen. She uses this a lot. For example, 2 people work in a job, one person smokes cigarettes, and they go to smoke every hour. They're not working as much as the person who's not smoking, and they get paid the same amount. So I think you could try to say it needs to be fair, it needs to be paid equal, but the reality is no 2 people are ever going to work the same amount. No 2 people have the same value. And I think that there'll never be true equality for that reason, like ideal equality for that reason. But it gets crazy though, because that's true, you get people trying to, you get people taking advantage of qualities that are not necessarily valued, but just favored in in a biased way. Like I want to hire men because I like the bros. Like that's I think that's where it becomes, it's not even value. That's just you're being unequal for a bias that doesn't do anybody no good.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And I mean, I think another example, just really quickly, is you have two different people's resumes and they look exactly the same, but you're not asking that person all of the challenges and tribulations they went through. Like right. One person could have gone through nothing and had the same accomplishments as the person that has gone through so many struggles, and still within those struggles, we're able to accomplish all these things still. So sometimes a resume is not even fair there, because then you don't, know who was able to get all this done, even with all these things and like obstacles in the way.
Cool. No, I agree. I agree. There's always those intangibles or those things that you don't even know the question to ask sometimes. Yeah. You just don't know. We're all so unique. I think that's the beauty in life. I'm all about, I like how beautiful the world is. I like the fact that there's short and tall people. I like the fact that there's white and black and Asian. I like that. Does it come with complications? Absolutely. And I think that's the beauty in it. Our histories are all different. And there are, now I guess where the contention comes is where people have taken advantage of other people, and there's been an exponential result from it. But yeah, but let's jump in the nitty gritty. How do because we all everybody here, you guys know, and whoever's listening is going to know what racism is, knows what sexism is. We've heard all from equality. How do we think, what do you think the solution is? If you were to come up with it, if someone said, Erica, solve, I'll go with Jojo first, actually. Jojo, you got the pressure. How do you solve racism? How do you solve racism?
I don't think I can do that as a white person.
I put the heat on the white person.
I don't think I am allowed to have a stance on a perspective that I don't have. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't feel like I'm entitled to have an opinion on that just because I haven't experienced what it's like to be someone of color. I think though, as a white person, I do hold the responsibility, not just being white, but coming from a wealthy middle upper class family, growing up in Vermont. Like, there's a lot of things I have a lot of privilege. So I think on a smaller scale, I can't overthrow the government, but what I can do is I can recognize that I'm starting at a much more privileged place than a lot of people. And there are certain scenarios where it's my responsibility to level the playing field. So I guess an example that would come to mind is like, over the pandemic, there are people whose well-being relies on going to work, So is it my responsibility to then stay at home, because I can afford to do that? So I think just things like that. Or like, if I am making a certain amount of money, I feel like it's my responsibility to put that back into the community, because some of that money is just coming from my privilege. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm starting with a level up than a lot of people. And so I feel like because of that, it's my responsibility to give that back. So that's not, but yeah. That's how I feel. And I would also just like to say, as a disclaimer before we get into more of this, I'm coming from a place where I'm incredibly open-minded, and like I said, I'm not entitled to have an opinion on a lot of these things. So I'm just trying to listen and learn and hear the perspectives of other people. And I think just telling all white people, like, that's what we need to do. Like, we can't be forcing our opinions on anybody,
Yes, let me just say, first off, and I know I'm saying this on behalf of a lot of people, a lot of Black people, shout out to you for that. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of just for even stepping outside yourself and trying to see from another perspective and trying to take on some of the responsibility, even though it's not really your personal problem. I mean, it is if, you obviously have, but personally, like you said, you feel like these are issues that you feel like is more of a responsibility. But shout out to you for even having that, because it doesn't even benefit you to say that. So shout out to you for that. And but I will say, and I'm gonna ask you, Erica, next what you think. But I also think there's a problem I don't like, and so back and forth. There's gonna have so much opinions, JoJo, from Black people, because Black people are we all have different opinions. And I feel like, I don't like when people get muzzled or feel like they're not allowed to have an opinion. I think you can have an opinion, but be willing to learn. That's just my 2 cents. I totally understand why. I think what you're saying is completely smart. It is the socially smart and responsible thing to do. But I hate the fact that you can't have a raw conversation and go and say what you feel so that we can fix it if there's like a raw feeling you have. I don't like that though. But I respect 100% where you're coming from. 100%. That's dope. Erica, what do you think? What do you think of solve racism?
There's a lot. I think JoJo's reasoning for saying she doesn't have an opinion also has to do with like we have to listen to so many people that are white that always have opinions, and then always have a rebuttal and a defense, and oh no, but this is not the solution. This is not going to fix that, you know. So I think she's being the one white person. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to listen and learn, and then yeah, like it's tough because she's the one person in this conversation, but I think that's valuable. And also in this situation, I think you can still have an opinion on, you know, especially a lot of white people are like, I want to overcorrect, like take the responsibility of like, yeah, this wasn't necessarily me, but this is my ancestors, and how else are we going to improve the problem until we get active in it, you know?
Right.
It's a tough situation, but I think even being able to speak and listen, when knowing when to listen and knowing when to speak, and understanding that like, oh yeah, my family has played a part in this. I've played a part in this. Other people of my race have fully played a part in this. And I want to try to fix this, instead of being like, even though she's not saying this, but instead of being like, I didn't really do anything. I see everyone equally. That's where it's just never.
Right. Got you.
I think where it became kind of apparent was in the election. And I was just hearing a lot of people, white people, saying, oh no, like this is the answer. Like you should vote. This is going to help everybody. You should vote for this candidate. You should do this. Like this is going to help everybody. Instead of really being like, maybe I should ask, you know, people what they think, or instead of forcing my opinion onto someone or what I believe is going to help people, maybe I should listen. And I think also white people have a tendency to grab onto one ideal, like they hear their one Black friend or their one, you know, the one person in their life, and they share their opinion that becomes like the monolith, the parent of all, you know, and they're like, oh, all Black people must think this way.
Right.
Or
what you're talking about is like voting for Biden, right? Like everyone was saying that Black people should vote for Biden. It's going to make everyone life better for everyone. And most people probably heard one person say Biden is the way to go, and that's what Black people think. So they assumed all Black people, this must be what all Black people want.
Right. Yeah. But I also think too, like, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought.
That's my fault.
So people cling on to an opinion that benefits them too. You know, like it was kind of like when Obama was president, like there's a huge population of, from what I've heard, there's a huge population of Black people who really didn't like Obama, but I feel like a lot of white people were like, oh my God, he's like he's the greatest president of all time, because he aligned with their stances the most.
Right.
So I think like, that's what I was trying to say. Like, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be part of, because that's just oppressing those voices even more, you know?
Right.
So that's why I say I don't have an opinion.
Yeah. No, I got you. I know what you mean. What do you think, Noble? You've been quiet. That's scary.
Yeah, no, because I thought you was gonna wait to ask me. So,
yeah.
So honestly, truthfully speaking, I have two answers. I have one answer that I feel like is a video game answer, which I feel like is the most unrealistic way to solve racism, but I do feel like it's the only effective way. And then I have a way that's a little more realistic. So I'm gonna give you the video game version first. And this is gonna sound crazy, but I want everybody to take into account how humans are. Most people don't understand things until they feel it, until they go through something. If somebody told me, I'll start with a disclaimer. I don't think racism will ever be solved. That's one. But if racism were to actually be solved, like if aliens came down and gave me power and was like, how would you solve racism? I think the only way to solve racism is to make the oppressors experience what we experience. So I feel like literally there would have to be another form of slavery, and so that they could feel exactly what we feel. Now, obviously that's never going to happen, but I think that's the only honest way that we would really be able to solve racism, like racism to not exist. And then some people might say, well, hate begots more hate, but I really don't feel like the majority of white people, even till today, no matter how many slave movies they watch, no matter how many stories they read, really understand what racism is. Because I feel like I know what's depicted on the screen isn't even 10% of what actually happened.
Right.
So in order for white people, and I'm not talking about obviously people like JoJo or even most white people in New York.
Yeah.
There's millions of white people in America, and we know the type of white people that we're talking about that honestly, genuinely still have feelings of hatred towards Black people. The only way those people would really be able to understand is if they were slaves themselves. And then they would be like, wow, I was a slave. Now I understand why that happened, or why you guys are so upset about your ancestors being slaves. Now, obviously that's not realistic. So my realistic answer is the only way that I think that we could, end racism or put a wedge in it. We kind of spoke about the election. I think that, Black people look for a lot of people to help them. And it's great to have white allies and allies of other, ethnicities support us. But I think until Black people can have like one unified stance, which you alluded to is so difficult because Black people are not this one thing anymore. And we have all these different opinions. Until Black people could have this one united stance, like I always have this dream, I sound like Martin Luther King, that Black people could literally, when there's an election coming up, say, this is what we're gonna do. None of us are gonna vote. We're going to sit down. We're not going to apply our vote to any of the party. Let them decide what they want. Now, the party that feels like they're going to lose because they're not getting any of our votes, we are going to force them. I mean, literally force them to actually do actionable things for us. Now, I feel like that's more realistic than my other version, but I think Black people literally united under one front, maybe even created like a Black party or something like that. And I know it's really hard because even you, I've spoken to you many times, might say, well, then how is that going to benefit a white person to help or something like that? And I can get into that later. But I think if there was one unified Black party and Black people decided to say, you know what, let me step outside of what I believe. What are most Black people feeling? What are most Black people thinking? What do most Black people feel would be the solution? And then we just afford our ideas to an energy to support that as a front, then I feel like that would really get the solution. And then lastly, just to continue on what you said, my opinion is literally completely opposite from what you said.
Wait, rewind that again to that last part?
I said, my opinion, I just wanted to let you know, I mean, it's not, obviously it doesn't matter, but my opinion is completely opposite for yours from that last thing you said, where you said you feel like white people should have an opinion. I don't think white people should ever have an opinion on anything Black. Genuinely how I feel. And I have a lot of white friends. I have white people that I love. You can, because I'm obviously not the police. You can think whatever you like. But if you ask me, I don't think you should ever have an opinion about anything Black.
Right.
I feel on that.
So so that was some powerful stuff. I think the first idea is pure crap. That's just me.
I said that's my video game answer.
That video game answer was crap. The reason I said it is because you said yourself that you think that like New Yorkers, like JoJo and others, white people who they're not racist, but people in other places that, and I assume people who don't have access, don't know Black people or know a few Black people and just whatever they have their feeling opinions are what they are. I think if slavery is not what made JoJo, we don't have to make JoJo, not to make you JoJo if New Yorkers didn't have to be slaves in order to not be racist. I don't think the rest of the world needs to be slaves to not be racist. That's my rebuttal to that. Now, and I know you said that was video games. I'm not going to attack you too hard on that. The second one, I actually think you really just sparked my brain. I never really thought about it. I think we probably do need a Black party. And what's crazy, I never thought about that before. Just me personally. I'm sure it may have been said before. I never heard it as a Black party or a Black. I guess the Black Caucus is supposed to speak for us, but it's not. I don't know. Couldn't give any input. I don't know what's going on with it. And as you know, I'm very much of the idea of integrative. I love the idea of people loving each other, stronger together, right? But I think that you're right. Black problems are unique to Black people, and they are very definitively different and separate, and everyone knows what they are, and they should be discussed, and initiatives should be come up with by Black people, and it should be a strong collective. And if white people want to help, fine, but it should be a Black party for the purpose of Black people's rights.
Yeah, and I also think like somebody like you or me who like, I know so many, you don't understand. I argue with my Black friends all the time. We all have different opinions. I think that's what we need though. It's not that we're going to just have this step in there and we all have the same idea. What do we really want? What are we really trying to figure out? We need to hear all of these opinions from all of our fellow Black people so we can start to get an understanding of what it's like to be Black in America for all fronts. For somebody a Black person that was maybe born into little money and they're like, why don't you guys just work a little harder? From the Black person that's like, well, I'm not that privileged. Like we need every Black opinion.
Yeah, hold on. I was gonna say, not to cut you off, I'm sorry, but I will say with everything I'm doing, what I'm saying, I'm not into Black people making excuses either. Like, and what I mean by that is, and I'm saying that as a Black person to my fellow Black people, I'm not into using the disadvantages that we have as a reason to say why I can't. Right. I feel like, speaking of the word privilege, and I want to jump into privilege, and I definitely want to jump into sexism. I know we got some time, but I don't like the idea of privilege and what it does and how people perceive privilege on both sides. I don't like what it does personally. I'm not saying this is how everybody should feel. I don't like the idea of privilege. I think it's crazy. That means that if I work hard and my son gets the benefit of my hard work, that he's privileged. I think privilege is relative. I think if you got 2 arms, 2 legs, you're privileged compared to somebody who has no limbs. Like I feel like it's an excuse, and it doesn't matter. I feel like everyone needs to focus on what they have and work towards their own success. And it's going to be different for everybody. Hence, I think there is no true equality. But do I think that as a whole, there should be macro conversations had to fight for equality? Yes, that should be happening while individuals do their best to move forward as well. So that's something I don't like, just personally, because we've seen it before, and I hear too many people say, not everybody is like that, or not everybody can be like that. But I think everybody can do the most that they can do, and I think everyone's not doing the most that they can do. And I get it. I'm not saying that, because the difference is this, and this is where the conversation goes, is that a Black person in poverty who's being a little lazy is not going to go anywhere. A white person who's privileged is going to be fine in America for the most part. It is the way it is. I think it is what it is. I think that's for me, and after you have to blame this on my personality type. I think I'd be miserable if personally, and no disrespect to anybody, I'd be miserable. For example, if I was a billionaire, right, and my father was a billionaire, and I said, you know what? I don't want to live with you, Dad. I'm going to go off. I'm going to go to a shelter, and I'm going to start from the bottom up. I'm going to change my name, and I'm going to build myself up. Let's say I went to a shelter, worked my way up, started my own business, became a billionaire, right? Even richer than my father. Let's say I did it from 0 to $1 billion or 2 billion, whatever. I think that once it came out in the news and they find out it's my father, they're going to say, yeah, but your father was a billionaire. And all credit, every magical thing that I did is taken away because of this word privilege and because of my connection to my father, even though I did it by myself. So I think that there's a lot of discrediting that comes. I think people need to focus on their own stuff. Real talk. There's too much watch on Instagram, too much, oh, this person probably had this. Focus on yourself. It's too much. Like, fix yourself. Yeah. Work on what you can work on. Sorry, little rant. But
I have a little point. So back to Noble's first point about his video game thing. For me, not a fan, just because I think that we're better than that as a race to ever want to do that. Do you know what I mean?
What?
No, we wouldn't be putting another race in this situation. That's the whole difference. The second point that we said, I think that's a great point about the political parties. I know that me and Jojo and Noble have talked about this. I think the biggest thing is funding should be equal when running in an election. That's the biggest leg up that happens, is because someone is immaculately funded compared to someone that has barely any funds. If there was a cap that you could have on funding for when running for president or for governor and all that, then that's more fair game. You know what I mean? Then you all have equal amounts to work with. Because that's why people get ahead, is because someone has more money to market themselves more. And then everything Prince said, I do love all of that too. I think people get way more wrapped up in this person had this leg up and that. And I think, at the end of the day, the Black person that was a little lazy isn't going anywhere versus the white person that was a little lazy and was fine. I think sometimes it's hard because us as Black people do get a little tied into the poor me thing to the extent of work. And then we don't feel like we're going to ever be good enough to try something. And I think we really need to empower Black people, even from a poverty level, to be like, no, you are worth it. You can do it. Yes, it's going to be harder for you. And just at least acknowledging the fact that it's going to be harder to a certain extent. Like, yeah, you might have to put 3 times the amount of work in to get half of what this white person has, but it is still possible. And like, yeah, that's all I say.
I think that's, take aside Black and white. I think that it's a loser's mentality to be working towards something and someone next to me, they have it easier. I'm going, damn, they have it easier than me. That's crazy. If I had that, I would be doing this. I don't got time for that. I don't got time for that. Like macro conversations, political conversations, yeah, I'm trying to fix that. But day to day, I'm coming, period.
You know, I really resonate with what Prince is saying, but I do feel like, just quickly, and we are going to segue into sexism just because for a little bit, but I really do feel that, but it's one of those things that's a big tug of war for me, only because I really used to feel like that a lot, right? Because I'm the type of person who likes to look in the mirror. Everybody here knows the type of person I am. I just feel like I'm different. I feel like no matter what you give me, I'm going to get what I want. It doesn't matter if I had one leg, the type of mentality I have, no matter the disadvantages I have in life, if I have a goal, I feel like I'm going to strive towards that. And I used to look at like a lot of, my cousins and just other Black people I knew, and I'd just be like, they would be complaining about stuff. And I'm like, why are y'all complaining? At the end of the day, I'm not saying it's right that we have these disadvantages, but now knowing, given these disadvantages, are you just going to sit around and complain about the disadvantages? You should want to just work even harder, because that's the type of person I am. When I go to the gym and play basketball, I want my team to be a little less better than the next team, so that when I win, that I can beat you guys. Yeah. But at the same time, recently, I've started to realize, no matter how hard my life is, I have started to realize how privileged I am, in the sense of, I look at some of those cousins that actually are lazy or don't have things figured out, and they don't have their mom and dad. I have both of my parents. So I start to look at certain things a little differently, like, you know what? Yes, they could be working harder, but at the same time, I feel like the perfect analogy I give my friends is, I'm gonna just close it up with this. You live in a town, right? And this is gonna go back to video game, and there's a school that produces supervillains, right? And in order to solve the problem, as the superhero, what you do is you constantly, beat up the supervillains, you arrest the supervillains. The real problem is the school that is producing the supervillains. You should probably go shut down the supervillain school. No matter how many supervillains you beat up and throw in jail, it doesn't matter, because this school still exists. So for me, I started to think about it. You know what? I could just speak to all these Black people individually and say, work harder, work harder, work harder. At the end of the day, the system that we have perpetuates giving us Black people who are hopeless, giving us Black people who don't necessarily want to work hard. So I try to tell myself, you know what? The energy I'm using to tell them to work harder, we should be using to fix this system, so that we're not in a place of disadvantage in the first place. But then that's just a lot harder and more grand. So I've been those.
Let's talk about feminism, because I have a response to that, but I think it's going to tie into feminism as a whole. Because I think a lot of ways that the problems that Black people have, I think that there's not the same. There's a parallel to a lot of the struggles that women go through versus men.
Yes.
I think there's some parallels.
Should we ask the same question as far as sexism? Like, how do you feel like you could cure sexism? Do you want to start it like that and then just go into?
Well, let's talk about what the problem in sexism is.
Okay.
Jojo laughed. He said cure sexism. Is that why?
How could we cure racism? Now you see how funny that sounds.
Say cure?
Yes, you did.
I did not use the word cure.
I don't know. It is a disease. All right.
Yeah. All right. Now, what's the problems that come with sexism? What is sexism? What are the disadvantages that women are facing right now and have been facing throughout history? Talk to me like I'm done, because I'm a guy.
Or do you want to start?
Oh, Jojo. Sorry. See.
Well, okay. Well, so this might go into the side topic, but I think I feel like in terms of the group in this podcast, I have the most, I know you don't like the word privilege, but I face the least threats, I guess you could say. So I think—
Elaborate. I know what you mean, but elaborate on that, because I just need to make sure that the viewers know what you're talking about.
Right. So I'm still a woman, but I face sexism from white men, you know? Like, I think where we get it wrong is that, like, yes, women can be faced with sexism, but there needs to be a big differentiation between white women and black women and black men and white men, because the sexism that I face is from white men. And so that's not, and it's not all the time. Like, people can argue with me, but I feel like I don't face life and death situations as much as a non-white person would. Like, the sexism I face is, yes, when I walk home at night in the dark, am I worried? Yes. When I hang out with guys who are drunk, am I concerned? Yes. Like, those are the worst case scenarios. Is, I feel like the worst case scenario of sexism is sexual violence. Like, that's the worst thing that could happen.
Right.
Or the worst byproduct of sexism. So, but that obviously is not as much of a threat to me as it would be to, like, Erica, I feel like. And also, I don't have the same problems that she does, you know? Like, my problems are not as threatening, just because I'm a white woman. So I don't have to deal with that.
So let's do this. And I know we're going in, because we part of our side topics for those that are watching, we're going to go into white feminism versus black feminism, which I'm intrigued to hear about, because I'm not too familiar with the concepts. But I do want to say, Jojo, I feel like you should, there's this, I feel like this is my problem with sometimes these conversations. I feel like you should be able to talk to us about feminism without having to, like, say, you're like tiptoeing, because for good reason, because I think there's some attacks that come on to, I just think we don't let white people talk sometimes, right? I feel like no one's like stopping you from talking, but you're anticipating probably every bad response that a viewer might have, which I get. I think that this is my own bias listening. And, like, because you're, like, talking about feminism, but you're also saying, but it's not as bad, but there are problems. You can speak freely about it. We're not talking about black people now.
Right.
Women, and we'll go into black versus white feminism, but women, equality in the workforce, like, these are things that, as a woman, like, that you go through. I guess I can understand why in this group, why it's a bit of a different conversation.
I think that needs to be part of the conversation, though, because I think we put way too much onus on white feminism. Like, that's the priority, is the white woman's agenda. And so I think that does need to be part of the conversation when we talk about sexism. I think white people do need to back down and kind of give the stage, because ultimately sexism is silencing the woman's voice. And so I think that we need to give that voice to the women who are the most oppressed. So do
you think that the whole, I remember during the Me Too movement, which I think was sparked in like Kavanaugh, and it was a couple of situations that blew it up. It was a time when that was a large, the trending topic for a very long time. And it was women, for the most part, were in a state of outrage, very similar to how most recently with George Floyd, there was an outrage with, so I don't feel like that went away. You know what I mean? Those problems didn't go away. And that wasn't a black-white problem, was it?
I think it was, because I think, and this is, well, yeah, Jojo could definitely talk about it if she wants to, but just speaking from a black perspective, because I speak to so many black women every day about stuff like this, because it's literally different. So, like, obviously, if you want to look at it from as a hierarchy perspective, just in the black community or just in America, I think black women are the most disrespected, oppressed group in America because of the intersectionality of the oppression they face, right? Yeah. So I think what Jojo is saying, but I don't want to mix your words up, is that a lot of times when white women speak about feminism as a whole, and they're talking about the oppression and things that they're faced, the oppression is so heavily carried by black women that I feel like it should be noted that black women face different problems. It's like if I say certain percentage of women face this, but 90% of that is held by the black population, then you shouldn't almost—
Is it 90?
No, I'm just saying, if that's what it is, depending on what it is, then you shouldn't be able to almost like claim that oppression as your own.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that racism is more of a dark-skinned person's problem versus a light-skinned Black person's problem, and light-skinned Black people like Martin Luther King shouldn't talk about it?
No,
this is tough, but I.
That was good, right?
Equal problem. I think it's an equal problem, but the biggest thing is though. I mean, I can go on. The order is the white man has the highest privilege, and then after that, it's the white woman, and then the Black man, and then the Black woman. I think there's too much non-specificity of like people are not, until this past year, we finally recognized that there is a difference between a Black woman and a white woman in privilege and in feminism. And now we're finally like, oh, maybe I should stop saying men and I should say white men, because there is a difference. And like a white woman still has more ability to be heard than a Black man. White feminists still have historically sexually oppressed men of color. Men are still overly sexualized. Like the sexism goes both ways, you know? I still think to a specific extent, Black men are way too sexualized to white women, to like an extent of like being an animalistic or being a desire, or, you know, it's just not being humanized. And I think that goes both ways in the work environment. I think sometimes some Black guys will get a job because the white boss is like, oh, he's hot, which is not right even for the Black man. They're like, no, I thought you hired me because I had these qualifications and blah, blah, blah. Like, because it's not right either. So this is, I could go on about this topic, but I think-
Go on.
Yeah.
I think Jojo's allowed to be careful because there's enough podcasts and there's enough conversations of white feminists just talking about their own, like talking about feminism and talking about, I didn't get paid this much as an actress, but they don't bring up the Black female actress, you know? There's enough conversations about that. I don't think there's enough conversations about it being like this, where we can be like, oh yes, I am being oppressed in this way, but it's not, we can't forget about the Black woman, because still, even women's suffrage, that was still ahead of black voters. Do you know what I mean? That happened first. So there's a big thing that needs to be recognized. And I think JoJo stepping back to let us speak is still valuable and important, because I still think there's less conversations like this.
Yeah, no, I definitely, the way I usually describe it, because I've had conversations with white women and white feminists who we've got back and forth, and I'm saying, and I'm having a conversation with them, and it's more so like, well, you're a man, this and the third. Well, I was like, I'm just speaking from a perspective of what Black feminists tell me about the difference between Black feminism and white feminism. It's almost like, you know, and it's definitely hierarchy of oppression. So for me, right, if a Black woman's speaking about a problem that they face, I'm never going to be like, but Black men go through X, Y, and Z, because I had a moment a couple of years ago, it wasn't forever that I was like this, maybe 2-3 years ago, where I sat back and I literally had to have an epiphany that, wow, Black women are more oppressed than Black men. It's not just Black people. We're not in just one thing. Black women are oppressed more than Black men, because Black men even are in certain situations, because we still benefit from the patriarchy to a certain extent. So for me, it's like, if you walk into a hospital with a paper cut, are you gonna try and skip the person in line that needs like a heart transplant or some shit? Or excuse my language, or something, or something, yeah. You get what I'm saying? So, and I understand what you mean 100%, Prince, because I already know vehemently, like, you want other people to be able to express their problems, X, Y, and Z. But I know if you're speaking to a Black person, especially me, or I don't know how other I know how other Black women feel, but I'm gonna let them speak for themselves. It doesn't feel like it's right to have that conversation without noting that this person has it worse. Because if I was part of a community, right, where I had less rights than most people, right, but there was a group under me, or 2 groups under me, that had less rights. Me being a person, if I genuinely cared about equality, when it was time to march, when it was time to organize and fight for equality, I would never bring up my problems. I would bring up the lowest person's problems first, because the truth of the matter is, if you really care about equality, and this is if you're a white woman, this is if you're a Black man, this is if you, any type of person who's oppressed, if you really care about equality, you're going to look at the bottom group and say, who is the most oppressed? If we get them their rights, everybody gets rights. There's not a world that exists where Black men help Black women get all of their rights that we don't get those rights. There's not a world that exists that white women say, you know what, screw what white women go through. Let's help Black women get their rights, where they also don't get rights. You know what I'm saying? If the most oppressed group gets their rights, everybody gets their rights. And that's
so just for clarity, right? What and for clarity, black women have, what kind of oppression do they have that's more than a black male? I guess you tie in both male and both being black and being female, but is there some specifics that come to mind?
I can let Erica like really expound upon that, but in my opinion, the fact that black men can oppress black women is right there.
Okay, that's right.
So that's the caveat, but Erica can speak on it more.
You can just motherhood, taking care of the children. Like you can just make it as simple as that. Respect, being expected to be loyal and monogamous with your person, but they're not in any of the way have to do the same or expect to do the same. There's like, it can go so deep, and I'm not saying that we're just oppressed by black men. I'm saying that we're oppressed by white men, white women, and black men, but like there's still less anger towards our own race. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to come and attack black men. I'm coming from a higher, like, yes, I'm being oppressed by white women, white men, and to a certain extent my own race, but like there's less anger towards my own race because this was all a result of everything else,
Yeah.
I'm not really angry at my own race and all the oppression that happened there, because it's still not, it was just all a cause and effect of everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not also mad at people for it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I'm sorry for cutting you off. But when I speak to black men, I say, yes, we need to be, because I have so many black friends where we have this conversation where they get upset because it's like they feel like they're just as oppressed as black women. And I'm like, listen, I understand where you're coming from, brother, because I felt the same way. But the thing of what you have to realize is it's not where it's like placing a blame on black men. We just need to understand that in order for the system to work of oppression and in order to hold up what I consider the white patriarch, is that there needs to be a hierarchy. And we, because we are men, benefit from that in a way where we oppress black women. And it's not that we're purposely going out like, I hate black women, but it's definitely a power we have that they don't have.
Got you. What do you think, JoJo?
Oh, well, I was.
No, but if you feel like I'm not, sorry, not to cut you off, JoJo. No, but you could definitely, as a co-host, definitely.
No, I definitely feel like you're having thoughts in your head that you're probably not saying. Like, I want you to ask.
Yeah, you have to. You're right. I'm catching. You'd have to ask me, because I'm not going to try to impose my, especially especially when it comes to talking about women. I'm not going to say much unless I'm asked. And you guys feel free to ask me questions as well. Let's make it more of a convo than it's me, interviewing, because. Well, I do have thoughts, but like, I guess just as guilty as JoJo, I feel like I don't know if I should say anything.
Yeah, I want JoJo to go first, and then I'm gonna start to pick at you.
I think JoJo has some of the same opinions as me, so sometimes her pointing out things, I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. So go ahead.
Yeah, so say what you guys.
Well, I think this actually is kind of a funny. It's like a perfect example of oppression, like, because Erica hasn't really had a chance to speak throughout this entire podcast. Like, and I think that's just like, it's like a clear, like, it's in front of our eyes, and that's, because we haven't been asking her, like, you guys we've all been talking kind of without actually saying, like, okay, here, Erica, you take this one. This is about that hierarchy, and, you're the one who's the most silent. So let's have you have a voice. So with that being said, I have lots of things to say about white feminism, but I feel like we need to hear from Erica more.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah, I think you can still say the points that you have, because I have a specific experience. Like, I'm adopted by 2 white people, right? My parents. And my mom is white, but she, even in her own right, and my mom was the breadwinner growing up. And she, even then, I still would be able to, my mom is not going to bring up her struggle as a white woman to me, growing up. Like, yeah, she was the only female doctor in her class, right? But she still made sure she never made a point to be like, I went through all of this. And like, I always heard the other side, like, there's not enough diversity. Why, Eric, like, she would tell me, Erica, you didn't get casted in this, you're the only Black person at the school. She was so specifically aware about so many things. So I still have an idea of white feminism, especially like with different friends. Like, I really wasn't aware of how unfair everything was until this past year. And I knew some Black women that wouldn't even identify as a feminist. And I was like, why not? And now I understand, because I feel like I fall into a similar category of being like, well, yeah, I don't want everyone to think that I'm supporting the white feminism movement where they are villainizing Black men still and sexualizing Black men and all this other stuff. Like, I get it. And I appreciate Jojo for letting me talk. But I think, Jojo, you still probably have a lot of points that you know from your experience, especially because Jojo's still, yeah, she grew up in Vermont around probably predominantly all white people, but she still moved to New York and had a different experience when she moved here. So if you can bring up some differences in your experience with white feminism, that would be great. Because it's just so much for me, you know?
Yeah, it's a lot. And I think like there's so much that we're grown up around we grow up around that we're taught to see, like we're taught to valorize like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the suffragettes and all these feminist figures who were really problematic. And that's kind of something that I've learned. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, we need to know this.
I'm not familiar with these people.
Well, I'll go into more detail, but like, we should know better at the end of the day. We should know better. But that's what we grew up around, you know? So like my family, the people back home, like they don't know better. They don't know better. But I think that's why like it's important for me to carry that voice to them, to you know, carry that information and say like, so Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a Supreme Court justice who passed away recently, and she did a lot for the white women's movement. What was that?
I was just saying right before the election. So maybe he might know.
I know she is. Yeah, I know she is now. Yeah.
I mean, the suffragettes were obviously, you know, the feminists who legalized voting for women. And who else did I say? Well, I think that's it really. But those are just my two examples. But I think it is important that we recognize that the white woman feminist movement, like in the 70s, was the agenda was not necessarily to dismantle oppression. I think the agenda was for white women to be at the same level of oppressors as white men. And so I think that's what my fellow white people need to understand, is that like, yes, the gender pay gap is an issue, abortion is an issue, but the bigger issue is giving Black women a voice, a place to speak. What are their problems? And like Noble said, like, there's not going to be equality unless the most oppressed is equal to everyone else. And I think what white feminism does not address is that we're prioritizing our already privileged needs above everyone else's. And like I said, the agenda wasn't even to dismantle oppression. It's so that white women are in the same place as white men. Like, okay, so now we're getting paid the same amount. So now we have a white woman CEO. She's in the same place of oppression now as a white man. She's not gonna go, she may not go hire, all these other people of color underneath her, and even if she does, they're still underneath her. So that's not really fixing the issue.
Right. I agree. And I think that we forget that it's still, this is tricky. There was still a lot accomplished with feminism in the 70s. And I think it's especially harder for people that are older. It's like my mom was big in the whole movement, but now she doesn't continue to talk about it as if she's still struggling with it. Do you know what I mean? So I think that still happens even like with women in their 40s and 50s and early 60s. There's still like, we hate men and we have to rise above. And I'm like, what about your other female counterparts, or what about Black men? Like, that still is a conversation that's so hard for people to have. And like, you shouldn't be at a table together where you as a white feminist is talking about we can have some sympathy and empathy and try to help you come to a solution. Especially I know Prince would want to hear these just like problems. Like, he doesn't think anyone's situation is invalid, but there's a level of appropriateness. Like, let's say that you're at a table with Black men and you're a white woman and they got a promotion and you're like, oh, well, are your coworkers all male, I'm assuming. And then that just like is a knife in the chest. Cause it's like, well, I work for a Black company, we're all Black. This is not normal for us to even be in this situation. Now we're coming from a place of, do you have any women on your team? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, example.
It makes sense when you say it like that. It makes sense when you say it like that. I think it's a thing of awareness, like being aware of what table you're speaking at. Like if it was a table full of white men that said that, then it would make sense.
Yeah, that would be a perfect situation, especially with social media posts. Like, let me be careful with if I'm directing. This is probably a great topic. We can transition into this, but I know me and Jojo have talked about this a lot. But self-love and loving yourself and making sure that men don't make you feel like you have to reach this standard, but you have to think about your audience and think about who you're talking to on your social media platform. You know, like who is that going to hit? Is that going to hit a woman that's going to feel offended that you even are saying that I do everything to alter myself for a man? Or are you going to get men upset, which is your point, is to like hit the white male group, you know?
Yeah, I don't like to say like, because I know that, or at least I hope that some of my family members are going to be listening to this. I think the whole like concept of, well, there's this concept of white fragility, right? Like we're victims, and and the tough thing to get over, which we do have to get over, is that like, say this hierarchy of oppression, it's not invalidating the white woman's struggle. It's not invalidating that we face issues. It's just saying that there are issues that are more important at stake. And I think what happens, and I've had this experience where I try to tell that to some of my white family members, friends, is that they're like, they feel invalidated. And that's not the case. So that's just something that I wanted to bring up. Like, it doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter, you know, where you were born. It matters. Like, there are still people who face more struggles and more threats than you do.
I think that definitely happens all the time. And I think it's because that's 30 seconds of someone of like, that's white, that is for once faced with the fact that they might have, you know, be privileged to a certain extent, and they're going to get defensive in that moment. Like compared to the Black person or to you, that it's telling them like, hey, there's a situation. It's like, no, like when someone is faced with that their whole life and you're like 30 seconds is too much to hear that. This might be wrong. Like, I think everyone needs to, there's a lot of, there's no way I'm wrong, or, I mean, yeah.
I can honestly relate to that, because I remember the first time that I was faced with the conversation of, oh, I have more privilege than a Black woman, or in a case that there's a possibility of me as a Black man being able to oppress a Black woman. I was like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make sense. That's not true. The first thing you're going to want to do is get defensive, because your whole life, if you've been told that you have had this sort of oppression, or if you're at a disadvantage, you don't want to believe that you could be that same oppressor for somebody else, or you don't want to believe that there's somebody that may be more disadvantaged as you, because then it gives, it's like an accountability thing. It's like, dang, wait, so I might have a power over somebody. It's like, what am I doing with that? Then you start to think, dang, is there a time that I was oppressing Black women, like with the things that I've done, or just like unknowing, you know what I mean? And then it gets, as a Black man, I think it can get dark, because then you start to parallel yourself to like, dang, is this what white people think when they oppress me? Are they not even aware of how they're oppressing people? Like, it starts to get real weird. So I can definitely relate to maybe a white woman feeling that fear, like, wait, I thought I was oppressed. I thought we were all in the same boat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my question would be, for you guys is like, how do you have these conversations with, like, how can I be, you know, kind of like a vessel for change as a white person, you know, because there's so many different varying opinions. And like, so how can I, around my white family where there's not a Black person who's gonna speak for themselves, how can I, you know, be like a vessel for change?
I think just educating, like, okay, so as annoying as it might be, because then you also might seem like the white person that's talking about a Black subject, and you're like, I'm just another white person that's talking about these rights, and it's going to seem annoying to Black. No, I think there's not enough people that are willing to have conversations with their family that are white, especially like if you have a family full of Trump supporters and you're liberal and you're not in that way, some people, it's just easier to be silent. It's easier to be quiet at the dinner table. You know, we were always taught to not talk about politics in conversation and social situations. But when you're surrounded by this, and it's just especially harder for people our age that have everyone with older ideas or conservative ideas around them and the rest of their families. I think just the fact that you're even willing to put the energy into talking about it with them is already helpful, but like to a certain extent, you still have to understand when to like walk away and, you know, maintain your own well-being.
Yeah.
But I think not talking about it is way worse. I think not, especially you have examples like, you know, all of us. And I'm not saying you should only go by what we say, but you know more Black people than just us three in here. So most white people just know like 2 Black people, and you live in New York, so it's also a different situation. Like where I'm from, I easily just the only Black friend at my dance studio, the only Black person at my dance studio, you know, and because I'm from Orlando, Florida originally, and that's still pretty liberal compared to the rest of Florida. So I still think you're doing more work than a lot of other white people.
Yeah, and I'll say it doesn't happen in one conversation, just to even bring up what Erica said, and then you can kind of give an idea how you feel, Prince, and then we'll probably wrap up to the trending topics after this because this is really drawn out. But for me, I feel like, and everybody's gonna feel different. I'm not gonna tell a white person how their family feels about them, but I always feel like, you know what, my family's gonna love me no matter what. So I love to have uncomfortable conversations with them. Just like you said, as far as the election, you know, my parents, everybody in my house are kind of like Biden supporters, or they consider themselves Democrats and liberals. And now it's like, I feel like there's a level to it, right? Like if you have Trump supporting parents or something like that, and you feel like that's wrong, then you can have that conversation with them. For me, I don't feel like what my parents are doing wrong, but I had this conversation for them. I was like, well, so do you think Biden's not racist? Or, you know, because like you said, Black people have different opinions. So I speak to my Black parents about educating themselves on the Democratic Party and the liberal movement a little more, to just not be blind to the oppression that's still in there. Don't think this is the cream of the crop just because you think this is the better option. So even though that's a very hard conversation to have, because like they're older Black people, especially in the North, that sounds so funny, are like tied to the Democratic Party, like white on rice or something like that. Like they can't, especially when I start having that conversation about how, in my opinion, Obama wasn't a good president. That, like, I almost got kicked out my parents' house. Like, you know what I mean? That could be very, very uncomfortable. But what I've noticed is I had the conversation not once, not twice, not maybe 10, 20 times. And I slowly start to see my mom and dad be like, you know what, that does kind of make sense now that you think about it. And you showed me these stats and you shown these videos of things that really happened. Maybe you're right, but you know, we still feel like this is right because this is the closest option to change. So then that's when it starts to, once you can start to like sway people's opinion slowly, then we can all get to a better understanding of what, you know, is best for the Black person in America. So for me, just speaking from my perspective, I don't necessarily align myself with conservative or liberal, but what I think is right for Black people, I always speak about in my household, even though it's literally taboo in like 97% of Black households in America to speak down on like the Democratic Party or the Obama administration, but I still do it because I feel like it's the right thing to do. So if you feel like what you're speaking about to your family is the right thing to do, then I would just continue to do it, and it'll eventually make a change that, you know, might be worth it, in your honest. And now Prince.
No, I mean, I don't really have, I feel like I'm learning a lot about perspectives here because there's so many, and some that I wasn't, say completely aware of, but it was good to hear about the Black feminism versus white feminism. I guess with feminism before, to me, it did seem like when I think about feminism, if there was any discrepancy, there's like old feminism versus new feminism in my mind. And what that is, so for example, you know, I think one of my boys said he's a feminist, right? And I'm like, and I'm a feminist. I think I consider myself a feminist because I want women to have equal rights. I want them to be treated equally as well. But I also don't like, there's some things that I've heard, I guess this goes with everything. I just don't jump on bandwagons. I don't like to jump on I'm a Democrat. I'm an independent, for example. I don't just subscribe to a gang, right? I grew up around a lot of gang activity, and I feel like, you know, everybody does what they think. You know, just there's always like this list of of different opinions, and how can I subscribe to all of them without checking them all out, right? So with feminism, I feel like there's been, I think even with an internal battle for women has been, like if you choose to be a stay-at-home mom nowadays, it's almost like going against the new feminism of you should be a professional woman and do your own thing, and being a stay-at-home mom is like losing power, and there's like this conversation where I feel like some stay-at-home moms feel like it's almost like I don't want to be like they're not allowed to be proud of being a stay-at-home mom, and then the other way around, like where women who choose to work and climb the ladder at their company or become a CEO, and they maybe forego being a stay-at-home mom as an option, may feel like they're judged, right, by the moms in maybe their community or whatever, like, oh, you don't care about kids, you care about power like the rest of like those guys or whatever, or this and I guess what I see and this is going to tie into everything, I think there's a lot of, I've been hearing a lot of talk about normalizing things, like normalize whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's crap personally, right? I know, and I say that, I know that shakes up a lot of people because I'm not into it. I also feel like everybody should be allowed to have an opinion, wrong or right, you should be allowed to have an opinion. I also think that I also believe that a lot of the conversations that are had are not this, and I think that nothing you guys said was wrong, in my opinion. I agree with most of everything you said. I think that effective conversation becomes effective means to fixing the problem. I think is where that's where my head is, right? Like there's definitely inequalities. There's definitely things that come from slavery and history and stuff that threw things off from being equal today. As far as talking about it, I'm not sure personally that talking about it with someone who doesn't agree changes people. For the most part, what I see in politics, and there's a reason that half the country is blue and half the country is red. Like, I don't think humans can see themselves. I think it would do humans a great service to step outside of ourselves and look at ourselves as humans and go, what the hell do we do? Like the same way we study animals, we watch National Geographic. If you look at humans, you'd be pretty surprised at how silly and simple-minded we are as a group of people. And what I mean by that is, how did it come down to like the last couple hours, the last couple days? Half the country wants Trump, half the country wants, and maybe it's like a couple hundred, like every year it's like half and half. It's like, it's only two. It's like blue and red, just like Bloods and Crips, blue and red. Like everything, like the Revolutionary War was blue and red. Is that a coincidence that blue and red is the polarizing? Is there like a science behind blue and red feeling like enemies? So
that's crazy that you bring that up.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that people just ignore, and then we have conversations to the point where I'm talking at you and you're talking at me. I feel good because I got mine off. You feel like you got yours off, and we both walk away having the same opinion.
Right, and especially we overcomplicate a lot of stuff too. But I think, this is probably a little bit off topic, but I think big thing we can throw in there is that everything that happened with the election, like just like the last election before that, Black people weren't really surprised.
Right.
As the numbers were going, we're not like, oh my God, it's this close. That was just coming from my experience. When I watch social media and around friends, oh my God, I'm so scared by them and not win. Like, duh. But this is I think it's
reality TV show.
Yeah, I think it's more of an obvious thing because we've experienced racism. So we're like, we didn't just discover this past year. I didn't just realize I was Black. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I did. It wasn't
there's literally the country split in half. It just seems set up, right? And I'm not saying that one particular mastermind, I don't know, but I'm not like on a conspiracy. But it sure looks like we split, and it doesn't look. You telling me half the country's dumb and half the country's smart? I
just think some people can have all of the educational tools. Because not saying I watched quite a few documentaries and read articles about different people that are educated and still choose the conservative and like all the opinions that you think that can only happen to someone that's not educated.
I think that's the point that Prince is making. I think what he's saying is that just because like not we, because it's not me, but like, let's say you and JoJo are liberal, right? You're speaking it in the tone that, well, that's conservative and the right is obviously the wrong option. So me, I'm an independent and you said you were independent, right, Prince?
I am, yeah.
So to me, I don't look at people on the right as they're wrong. Honestly, to me, I look at people on the left a lot of times that they're wrong because you guys claim to be the more educated, but it's still putting people in power who are not necessarily even progressive as you think.
Or less evil.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
You're hiding your bad intentions.
How to become evil and good? How to become good and evil?
For me, that's what I'm saying. I don't look at it as evil as good. I think most politicians are bad people, one. So I just look at it as bad and bad. But as far as the actual people who are voting, I don't look at people who vote for conservatives as evil. Because you want to know why? I think this is a good point. I stepped outside of myself sometimes and I'm like, you know what? If it wasn't so taboo to vote for Trump, I don't vote. I'm gonna just throw that out there, right? I'm sorry if any of you hate me now that I said that on camera, but I don't necessarily vote, right? But if I've stepped outside of myself, and when I just look at what the two people represent, in my head, I rationalize it like this. America's going to be racist no matter who we vote. I can see why, even as a white person, it's like, do I care about Black people's rights? Yeah, but voting for Biden might not help that. This guy might make me more money. I can see why somebody would vote conservative and not necessarily be racist, because I don't consider myself racist. And I could see myself in the future voting for a conservative because I feel like they would help Black people more than voting for a liberal. So I don't look at it like the right or the conservatives are just these terrible people, and the left and the Democrats, this is like obviously right option. So I think that's kind of what Prince is getting at. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that people on each side get caught into believing that the other side is completely evil when we're not looking at the reasons that people are supporting things. Because then people say, well, if you're supporting Trump, you must be racist. Well, I guess if you're supporting Biden, that you must support every decision he's made in life. No.
So So I don't think that it's not like so as of late.
Not black and white, but I'm just saying I think it's obvious that we're divided in two. I don't think it's news.
Yeah, people are not smart. People are not smart, generally speaking.
And some people are more selfish, and I think that's also normal. Like half of the population is only interested in their own family and their own group.
Right. And that means I'm not going to, so if that's true, if I know that you are that kind of person, I'm not going to ever listen to your opinion as a Black person speaking about Black rights. Well, of course you think that, but if it was the other way around, you'd be doing what I'm doing. So I'm just saying that there's not an educated approach to most of these problems that we have, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of, I think that there are things that need to be fixed. I'm just not a fan of the way that the approaches in terms of how things are being fixed. To me, I look at it like, and even being Black, sometimes I feel like it's kind of like being a New York Knicks fan, not to throw the Knicks under the bus. Like, I want the Knicks to win, yo. I want the Knicks to win, but they be doing, I just don't like the way that they go about it sometimes. They trade for an injured player and it's not the exact same thing, but it's like, I don't agree all the time. And I'm watching us lose. And I'm like, and I can't really, it hurts. I'm not, so I just know that we're not the only ones that have been oppressed. I'm the kind of person I like to study before I do something. So I'm like, all right, who has been oppressed that has overcome oppression? Has anybody been oppressed that is winning right now?
I believe so. Well, I don't know.
I think so.
I think so too, but I almost felt like if I said it, people would be crazy.
I'll say it.
Honest, you want me to be honest? I'm gonna be honest. You know what?
Jewish people.
Instagram at Noble Life if you need to DM me, but I feel like
Jewish. Let me say it. Let me say it. Jewish people. I think Italians have been oppressed. I think Irish have been oppressed when they came to this country. Different levels. I'm not saying they were slaves and they got mentally thrown off. I get it. But I'm just saying, because we're mentally thrown off because of our history and we can't think straight. But this is where I get mad. I'm like, but we can see what works. Like,
let me ask you something real quick.
I think the Jewish.
Do you realize that everybody that you named is white?
Yeah.
So you don't think that has anything to do with the fact that they overcame the oppression?
I think you could look at it that way. But I think there's been oppression in other countries. I'm saying they've been oppressed. It probably helped them. I don't know. I'm trying to think.
I think the Jewish community, it helps to a certain extent. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah, they didn't have the same challenges as us.
Yeah,
but I don't think they were handed. I don't think they were necessarily looking for handouts.
Right.
And I hate the word handout because then you go, oh, you're saying we. I'm saying, but I think we look for handouts sometimes as a whole. And I don't like feeling like I'm looking for a handout, right? I think allowing me to have taking away the injustices, like things that are just completely wrong, like cops killing us at a disproportionate rate. Yeah, we got to talk about that. You know what I mean? Things like that. We got to fix that. We got to have, it needs to be awareness. But I feel like I'm not saying that this is the solution. I'm saying that we just need to look at things that have worked and look at what's different about our approach and why we haven't gotten very far. Furthermore, and I kind of got thrown off, but what Erica said is really what I was going to say too, about humans tend to have a us versus them mentality, period. So I think, and the only way to really overcome the reason, JoJo is here, she's white, right? And she, for the most part, agrees with most things. But JoJo, even though she's white and she's part of this community of white people, she also feels like a part of this community right here. So she empathizes. She said there's a lot of things she did not know that now she knows because she's in a different community right now. Yeah. And so I feel like people, it's really simple. Humans do not really think that much as they think they do. We really just connect our thoughts to us versus them. How can this benefit me? Some people might, and people who are empaths who they tend to feel like if everyone's happy, I'm happy. So they don't want to see somebody get bullied because there's a personal fear. And if this person's bullied, it's going to affect me at some point. That's the only reason people do stuff is because it's going to affect them. White people are marching with black people because they have black friends. Like in New York, they're walking because they're like, yo, I can't even look my black friends in the face if I don't support them on this one. Right. But it's not because they just see what's right. Yeah, you want to be real? Like if we really go down to human nature, and this, no one's going to agree with me, but if you could just hear me, you could hear me. Like you're not going to say, yeah, I agree with you, Prince. Like, yeah, I only need to help.
100% right. It comes down to the human nature aspect of it. I think if we really want to change, it's almost like you got to play the game. Like I get what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Study humans and be like, well, how did these people, okay, Jewish people, Italian people, these people, they were able to become integrated and just like make, the oppressors see that we're just like you can be part of this community. But I do think it was a little easier because they were white. You're right.
Maybe so. But you know what? Some white people like me. You know what I mean? Like, not to say that's not like some real house and stuff.
No, I get what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like all white people are our enemies, right? Like JoJo's an ally, right? So it's not like, so it's almost like being, the way Jewish people, like some white people still don't like Jewish people.
That's true.
There's some white people that still don't like Jewish people. Still like, they're never gonna like them. There's people got Nazi tattoos on them. They ready to kill them. They need to, So yes, being white helps. There's gonna be advantages and disadvantages for everything. I'm concerned with what works. I don't want, just like business. So you guys work with me. I don't like hearing why things can't work.
Yeah.
I want to hear about what we can do that can work. Other than that, the stuff that y'all want to talk about while and drink and just get pissed off and commiserate. I'm not having that combo. I'm just speaking about generally. If we really try to make change, we got to look at what's going to make change. And I could go on forever, but that's, me being quiet mostly was just like listening to you guys, different point of views. I'm not against anybody. I really, really, really believe, and I think it goes over people's head, what I really mean when I say stronger together, I really do believe that stronger together really is the way that, because I think humans, no matter what happens, are always going to have this intrinsic nature of us versus them. So I feel like the best way to overcome that is to be a bigger us.
Yeah. I think I definitely need to, just even outside of this, I think I'm going to learn being around you because I definitely have a totally different opinion. But I feel like your way is probably going to work, to be honest.
You don't got to say that
I do think that. Like, if we wanted to see if we ran a game simulation, I think your way would work. But I'm more of like the stronger alone. I think Black people need to be isolated and alone.
But you know what? Let me say. I think there's a place for that too, though, because Italians made the mafia. You feel me? That was a big part of how they got to be big in business and own buildings and stuff. Yeah, they did take some stuff by force. I'm not saying that
everything's nuanced. I think you need people leading. Right. I think that makes sense.
Right, but and same thing with Jewish. I think there's been a lot of, and even I remember Frederick Douglass. People don't really look at like the people who really made change in terms of Black history. They really did go against the grain. Even Martin Luther King. A lot of what he said, he did believe in stronger together, but he also was not with the crap. He was not with the BS either.
Yeah, just because you say stronger together doesn't mean you're going to turn the other cheek to.
No, don't get it twisted. If a white person spit on me, they catching these hands straight up.
Actually, we're going to just cut that clip as the promo.
I know, right?
That's the clip.
Right? That might, yeah.
I honestly do want to end up getting into these trending topics.
But get into the trending topics. I think we touched on
it. Is there anything? Let's get into it. Is there anything else that you guys want to just close up with, or did you feel like?
I think we're good.
I just want to say one last thing. I think that generally speaking, whatever it comes to, I think having like I think not having an opinion or being open-minded is severely underrated. I think people are so quick to be like, I have a strong opinion. My opinion trumps all. I know everything. Da, da, da. And I think that's really overrated. I think there's a great, like, and I'm speaking for white people primarily. I think, like, you know, we lose out from being closed-minded. I think being open, because like I've changed so much. I've learned so much, even just this past year, even, you know, going to Alvin Ailey, like I have just changed so much in my beliefs, and I am still continuing to change, and I'm still being called out on things. And I am the type of person who you know, want to do the right thing. And so I'm going to acknowledge when I fuck up. And sorry, I don't know if we're allowed to swear.
Or cut that out.
But like, I think that's underrated. Being open-minded, you know, apologizing, being wrong, admitting to being wrong.
It does go a long way, and that goes a long way. A lot of people think that they can't apologize. They think it's too late. They're gonna get canceled. I know we're gonna not get into that topic, but
that was a side topic.
I know, but that's just to go over that. That still goes into this. You know what I mean? Like apologizing and it being genuine, not coming from a place of I'm doing this for publicity and to clean up the mess I made, and coming from a genuine place. It's pretty obvious. Like we can tell when you're being genuine and when you're doing it in a way to just
right. Here's my thing though. We, you know, if we just want people to grow, like we want white people to grow and be smarter and stuff. If that's the way we're really gonna be, then JoJo's getting smarter and we're staying where we are. Like my head is like, I want to hear stuff that spark my brain too. So I do want to hear your opinions, JoJo. You know what I mean? Like I don't want you just collecting info. And I know that's hard. I'm speaking because black people tend to do that, right? They say shut up and listen. As a whole, like that's been the message with the whole George Floyd thing. It was like white people need to just listen. But I want to hear the root of why you think the way you think, even if it's wrong sometimes. Like, you know, one of the things that I learned in
always hearing that. I'm coming from a place of always hearing that opinion my whole life, and always being the only black person in the room, and always being the only black person in the school. So that's why, like, I understand her being quieter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't mind hearing it. So this is for everybody, right? And this may help you in your personal lives, and we'll move on. This is just the thing that is part of the effect, part of the way that I've approached things and the way I've learned and way I've been, maybe you say had more influence is, you know, in the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And there's a lot of books that talk about this. And I always talk about this book, but the 5th one always is seek first to understand and then to be understood, right? So meaning that in a conversation, if me and Noble are arguing, he has an opinion, I have an opinion, I can't control Noble. I can't make him shut up and listen. I can't do it, right? But the only thing I can control, if I want to have some control in this conversation, is I can control my own mouth, right? I can control my own ears. I can go, Noble, tell me how you feel. And I listen to how you feel genuinely. And when I speak to you, I actually let you know that I heard what you said. Mm-hmm. I might not agree with anything you say. And you say, I think you're a hateful person, Prince. And I think this and that and that, because last time when you didn't want to hear what I had to say, I'll go, damn, and if I listen to him, I'm gonna respond to what he just said. I'm gonna say, that's crazy. I'm not. It's funny you think I'm hateful. When I didn't respond before, it was because of this, because of that. He knows that I heard him. He's gonna go, yeah, yo, right? And he's gonna get quiet. And I'm gonna go, well, from my point of view, I guarantee you, from that point, Noble's probably gonna listen to me, versus if I just came in talking. And I'm saying that and it's a mature stance to take. And it's something I've grown to. I'm still growing on. I still have arguments with my wife at home that sometimes I don't shut up when I should. And but when it matters, I gotta shut up, even if the person is wrong, because most of the time, most people are not mature. They're not gonna listen until I listen. So I'm actually in control when I listen first.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that to people who are being oppressed, and sometimes and we want to like, nah, you are the oppressor. Like, all right, shut up and listen to the oppressor real quick.
Yeah, just like take the minute, because then the conversation will be done faster.
Before, but go ahead.
You just take a moment to relax and listen. Yeah.
I heard this before, but go ahead. Talk. I'm not going to interrupt you. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's move on though.
That was a great closing. That was a great closing.
It's a great closing.
So let's get into these trending topics. So the trending topics obviously are what they sound like. They're trending topics. We just do quick hitters. Some of these topics deserve more time, but obviously we went over the main topic already, so we'll just get into these. So first one of the trending topics, we're going to be talking about COVID-19 and the vaccine rollout. So I don't know if you guys have a lot of information about this at home, but obviously when the vaccine first rolled out, it was very limited. They were giving it to older people first in like nursing homes, and there was kind of like an age gap. But now we're seeing news that it's about to roll out more effectively to people that don't have pre-existing conditions and younger people. And this kind of ties into what we spoke about before. I've had tons of conversation with a lot of people during the pandemic who have been safe, some who haven't been safe, and just their idea about taking the vaccine. So I kind of wanted to hear where you guys were with that. I mean, I can go first if you guys want me to, just to kind of set the tone. But I would also love to hear what you guys have to say as far as just how do you feel about the vaccine rollout period, just like how fast everything's happened, and are you inclined to take the vaccine and why? So
Everybody watching this podcast, I want you to pause it and guess what Noble's stance is and then press play. Go ahead. I think everyone knows your stance.
I'm flipping that again. So for me personally, I believe in the right to people's choices, but I do also believe in the right for people to not harm others. What I mean by that is, let's say me, I don't want to take the vaccine. I've never gotten a flu shot in my life. I never even like going to the doctor to take blood. I hate needles. Now, I also understand that there's people out there who are immunodeficient and not getting the vaccine might affect them. I'm not going to go around any of those people. Matter of fact, if I don't take the vaccine, I'm probably not even going to be around my family as much. But me personally, there's a history of this country mistreating Black people in medicine. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm not going to say that the vaccine is this big conspiracy to make every Black person on earth sick. What I'm saying is, and this is coming from a selfish perspective a little bit. I mean, I've had family who's gotten sick. I don't feel like personally that I am at risk to be severely harmed individually by COVID. That coupled with the fact that I don't trust medicine and the way that medicine has affected Black people for years, that coupled has made my decision that I don't think I'm going to get a vaccine that was made in a couple of months when most other vaccines have been developed over years and time. Also, when I'm looking at New York and I'm looking at all these other places and the numbers are going down, but most of these people haven't even gotten the vaccine, I'm just questioning the validity of a lot. Now, it would probably be easier for me to get it and just be like, let me just do the right thing. Everybody gets the vaccine. Everybody feels safer. But I'm a rebel with a cause, unfortunately. So I don't personally. And let me tell you, there's a lot of Black people who's going to disagree with that. I have a roommate who disagrees with that. I have people close to me who disagree with that. My mom and dad, they're saying they're going to get the vaccine. Everybody's saying they're going to get the vaccine. I can't see a world in which I have the choice to not get the vaccine that I'm going to get it. Like, obviously, if I guess it was like mandated or forced, I wouldn't really have a choice.
Right.
I'm not going to like fight the power that much. It's not that serious. I trust my immune system to fight off whatever they have in the vaccine. But I just feel like it's kind of wild for us to expect everybody to get the vaccine, just the way we expect everybody to act the same way when it comes to COVID. So yeah, that's kind of my stance on it.
Yeah.
All right. I know that was more than a minute. I apologize. That was 2 minutes actually. My time. Yeah, go ahead, Erica.
I think everyone has the right to choose when it comes to the COVID vaccine. It's not like the measles vaccine where there's years and years and years and years of testing before it gets sent out. I do have different opinions on other vaccines. So my flu vaccine is a different opinion than the COVID. My measles vaccine is different than every other type of vaccine. I have a different opinion on.
You're not an anti-vaxxer, are you? Let me stop.
No, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I believe in vaccinations, but I think everyone should have the right to choose when it comes to the COVID vaccine. My mom is vaccinated, but she's a doctor, so that's a different situation, and she's in Florida, different place. If I have the opportunity to get it, I'm going to get it, but I don't expect all of my loved ones around me to get it, and I'm not going to not see them because they didn't get it, if that,
Yeah.
So, like, I think this is a different conversation than other vaccination conversations, and I'm pro-vaccines for everything else. Just for this, I think this is definitely a specific situation, especially for Black people. I'm not going to come for someone else that's Black that's decided not to get it. It's just not where I'm at,
But white people, you'll come for them though.
For sure.
No, I'm just not. I'm just
joking.
No, it's coming from a different place. But I guess so. Yeah, you can say that then. You can say that. But
Okay.
especially if someone that I know is Black is being careful, like then I'm especially, like with everything else, I'm especially not gonna put down their
Black people get a pass, you saying?
Yeah, they get a pass.
Oh, interesting.
Overcorrection. But no, really,
Final answer?
I will have a discussion about other vaccinations with people if they're anti-vaxxers, but for this one, it's just, this is a very circumstantial situation.
Listen, when it comes to the vax, I be supporting white people sometimes. Like when I be seeing white people talking about just COVID and just the vax and everything, I'll be like, you know what? I support y'all on that one. But yeah. So how do you feel, Joe?
I think it's one of those things where we don't actually have a doctor in this podcast. So it's like we all are coming from the similar perspective. Like we all work in fitness, we're all healthy. You know, that's like the culture we're coming from. So I think it's really hard to have an in-depth conversation about this when we all kind of represent the same opinion. I had a really eye-opening conversation with someone who worked in the hospital, was on the front lines, I guess you could say, yesterday. And he really changed my opinion about COVID. So, or not changed my opinion, but like he really enlightened me on certain things. And I've been processing what he said. And so I think it's just one of those things where it's tough for me, again, to like be like, oh, this is what I believe, when it's like, I haven't really talked to a doctor about it. So
you have to believe stuff.
I mean, even like her, I haven't had too many full-on conversations as I wish I talked to my mom before I got in this thing. For her professional opinion.
Topics.
Exactly. But I didn't. Just so you know, I didn't call my mom before this. For her doctor opinion on this, but I think that needs to be a person placed to educate us. And I know that's going to be hard because people are like, well, this doctor is trying to push this opinion on us, blah, blah, blah. I think that's important.
I don't trust my own doctor when I go to the doctor.
Apparently, a lot of doctors have different opinions too, though. In the world, I should say, like you look at the World Health Organization, there's a lot of doctors who say different stuff than our Dr. Fauci, who has been our expert that we have looked towards. But there's some that disagree with him. And I'm not an expert in this, so I can't even speak in depth on that. But I know there's difference of opinions even in the medical field. So
I think this is the first time the medical field has had such differing opinions on a vaccine. I think with every other vaccine, it's usually pretty black and white on where you would stand, like political, what we talk about.
Yeah.
But with this, it's not a normal conversation at all.
Right. So Jojo, did Jojo just dodge her opinion on it? Is that what
she's dodging everything? I'm gonna be honest.
She says we have all the same opinion on it as if it's pro-choice.
What's your opinion on it, Prince?
Huh?
What's your opinion on it? You getting vaxxed?
I'm not getting vaxxed, but I'm pro-choice. I'm pro. I think people should do what they want. If I'm going to keep it really real about the whole COVID situation, as you know, I follow protocols, like in terms of I wear a mask when I go in places. Like Noble, I'm not personally worried about myself. I do keep in mind that there are people who are in fear, and the people who are in fear of the vaccine. I mean, of COVID, for good reason in some cases. And there are also people who are older and are immunocompromised or have comorbidities, things like that they know about. And for those reasons, I know, and I really more so as a collective responsibility, I do my part. I don't like the difference of information coming from the same sources, our government, the way it's changed constantly. You lost my
respect.
Not only we have respect for sure, and you lost my trust. Whether you're lying or you didn't know and then you found out and then you switched, whatever the reason is, I don't think you know what the F is going on. Or if you do know what's going on, you definitely stringing me along. Let me tell you something. As a CEO, as a person I'm a strong opinion person, as if you haven't noticed through this whole podcast. So I weigh out all the information. I'll sit down and meditate on it and think about it and go, did that person make any sense? And if the answer is no, I'm going to make decisions for myself. Now, I am a part of a community that is a larger community, the world, the troopers, so I do what I need to do. Our gym is one of the safest in the city. We have all the protocols in place that the CDC, a little segue, right? The CDC mentioned that we should have. And that's just me being responsible. But no, I'm not getting the vaccine. Well, you know what? as of right now, based on the knowledge I have, I don't see it happening.
All right.
I'm not getting the vaccine either, just because I have never really gotten a lot of vaccines. But the thing is, I think like what we need to think about is the responsibility. And I haven't formulated an opinion on this yet, but I think maybe this doesn't pertain to the vaccine, but it pertains to other protocols. I think the community does have a responsibility to uphold to just protect other people. And there are some people who don't have that privilege to make that choice necessarily. Like their livelihood depends on going to work, depends on, being not in social distancing areas. But if you do have that choice, I think you do need to keep in mind what what the consequences of your actions are going to be.
If I had a comorbidity I knew about, and I knew that if I got COVID, if I knew that it would probably make me sick and I could possibly die, I would probably wear an astronaut helmet personally. I would not ever, and I'm not saying, what I'm saying is I would make sure that my face is blocked from whatever you got. I don't trust people like that. I would never depend on you to keep me safe. I'm never living like that. I'm never living like that. So people, I don't really agree with that stance on forcing everybody to make other people safe. I get that is I know I dug myself a hole with that one because that's a strong, everyone's in agreement about that we all need to do our part to make everyone safe. I think growing up, maybe it's because I'm from the hood. Maybe it's because I done been through knife and gun situations and I've been in fights. I need to keep myself safe. And I would like to keep you safe, but I don't think that people should forcefully make people do what's safe for me. Yeah. I think I should protect myself, especially when I can block my nose completely if I need to.
Yeah, I agree. I see what you're saying, Prince, entirely. And I really had to think, because the other day someone was saying, oh, I worked in a hospital where I had to make the choices of who got the ventilator and who didn't. And it came down to as simple as this person had money, this person didn't have money. And so then it's like, well, that person who doesn't have money, they don't get to live, because what if they're, underprivileged and they don't have money, so they don't get to live? Like, yeah. I'm protecting that person. That's why I'm supposed to wear a mask. Like,
but in my reality, that happens all the time.
Yeah, I was about to say there's a lot we can go into about this, but this is
yeah.
Just to finish it off, I would just say that I understand where both of you are coming from. For me personally, I'm not going to subscribe to the stance that you're taking, JoJo, because if that was the case, they would have been protecting Black people when we were dying in the hood every day. That's right. What I genuinely feel. So I'm not going to subscribe to that because they didn't subscribe to that for us or for anybody else in America. And this is not the most deadly thing that the country has seen statistically. So that's why I feel like it doesn't make sense to hold that stance right now. But it definitely makes sense if you're listening at home. I would say for yourself, continue to keep everybody around you safe. Continue to believe, the things that you feel like is going to keep you and your family safe, and just continue to do the research on your own as well. Listen to the experts. Just don't take all of your information from just one source. I would say just continue to get information from every reliable source that you
we could do another. If people like this and want to hear more about this, I can get a doctor to talk with us. It'll probably get real scrappy.
Yeah.
Having another podcast about that. I'm sure we have to cut this one in half.
Yeah,
we are going on, guys.
So when this comes out, when this comes out, definitely just let us know if you would like us to expound upon this topic. Yeah. The next trending topic is, hey, have you guys heard that Texas froze over? I don't necessarily have much to say about this other than global warming and the fact that our government isn't really prepared for anything. But do you guys have any other thoughts? And all right, I just wanted to be respectful. Rest in peace to everybody who's lost their life because of the inconvenience of the government not being prepared. But yeah, do you guys have any quick thoughts on this one?
I have a similar opinion and thought to you. I basically think this is a consequence of global warming. I do believe in global warming and environmental damage. But I do also believe that our government doesn't care about those things, especially the last 4 years. With what wasn't the EPA dissolved, I think, the Environmental Protection Agency. But yeah, I think it's terrible. People are dying and freezing to death in their homes because they're not Texas. You know, you don't think you're in the South. Texas never has had anything like this happen. So
Yeah,
no
that's
one's
true.
prepared for it. No one's homes are prepared for it. No one knew before their power went out that, hey, like, even though I guess there was a week warning, that's not enough. Like, it's like, oh, well, they did know for a week. You still don't believe that everything is, you know, especially when no one's prepared you for it. You still don't believe that all of your pipes are going to burst and all this is going to happen. And then you're not going to have power for over 80 hours and no heat and no, it's just terrible. But yeah, I do think it just all aligns with that. And I do have I didn't even know, honestly, this was happening in Texas, except for my one childhood friend that lives there now. I was just watching her story because I don't have TikTok or anything, so I didn't see all that stuff. I just knew from her, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe she still is sitting in there bundled up in coats and layers in her room. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Jojo, you know anything much about it, or have any opinions on it, or?
Nope. My only opinion is global warming is definitely real and needs to be addressed. That's all.
Yeah.
Global warming.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, with my takeaway from this one, I definitely went Noble. Like, so at first I heard about it, and I was like, oh, it's there's a snowstorm in Texas, and I was like, so, right? I was like, because they're like, basically, let me explain to my ignorance, because I was ignorant. I was like, the snow in Texas is crazy. I was like, so. Matter of fact, you brought up the trending topic, Noble, and I was like, so. I was like, no, we're not gonna talk about snow. And then I realized that people were actually being affected, and there's deaths. And you live and you learn. And I looked into it, and I think my takeaway was, just in terms of how, there's so many things that we're not prepared for, just generally, as just we're used to what we're used to. And one thing I did take away, my own lesson I didn't know, was that, do you know that when you barbecue, that the coal emits carbon monoxide? So because I'm like, so I guess maybe people were lighting barbecues inside their house to warm their houses up. And that's how some people died. I believe, I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of different articles. And I'm like, that's not that far-fetched. I can see somebody doing that if you got coal.
Yeah, especially if no one has power to Google it before doing it. You know what I mean?
Right. Wow.
Especially a lot of homes in Texas, like, well, at least in Florida, I don't have gas, like in Florida. Like, way we have the little stove that pushes and the gas comes up. That doesn't exist in Florida. You have a flat stovetop. Right. So there's never a risk of me killing my family like there is here if you smell gas.
Right.
So yeah, people in Texas, I don't know if it's the same, but it could be the same where they don't have the same even types of stoves because there's no gas, there's no basement, and they might have done that, and then it might have killed their family because they never had to deal with anything like that. They don't have that.
Crazy, and that's really where I started really just looking and go, this might be. Sometimes you don't even know. You might like, it's cold, we'll get over it. I got this. I'll like the barbecue in the house or whatever the case is.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate. The equivalent would be somebody in Florida seeing news that there was a hurricane in New York, and they're like, "Well, we always deal with that. I mean, they should be can't be that bad." And then it's like people over here dying because we've never had a hurricane or a tornado.
Natural instinct, but still, for me, from my head, I was always like, "There's a hurricane in New York. They're not prepared for that. Their buildings are not prepared for that." Do you know what I mean? But yeah, sometimes it just takes a moment. Someone just have to tell you, and there's no reason to feel super bad about the ignorance that lasts 30 seconds.
Right.
But yeah, it's just, that's why people just shouldn't also be alone all the time. So then someone can tell them like, no, this is actually how it is. And you're like, oh.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to my mind when I started realizing how bad it was Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Exactly. Same.
Natural disasters. When I say natural, I mean global warming included. Natural in terms of like things that are coming from nature, and again, not nature, but messed up nature.
Yeah. I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, but I just feel like it's. I don't know if the government needs to do a better job of being prepared. I think that and this is my little Noble had a video game theory. So my video game theory is that the government doesn't care because I see a lot of money going into outer space. I think they're trying to get us another planet. And I think they're like, well, if Earth messes up, we'll just start preparing to move off the planet. Maybe I watched too much movies.
That's not too far fetched. There was this movie with Eddie Murphy where he lived on the moon. Anyway, we can wrap up that topic. You guys give us, in the comments or wherever. I'm pretty sure this is probably going to go on YouTube too. You guys can just give us your opinions.
Oh, we have one more thing.
Yeah, we have one more last thing.
Yeah.
In lieu of it being obviously Black History Month, we're releasing this. This is just kind of, and it would be great to get JoJo's perspective on this as well, because You know, a lot of people have ideas about what's activism, what's performative activism, what's really helping. How do you guys feel about how brands act during Black History Month? Obviously, you know, you see everybody change their logo to like an African flag, or, you know, YouTube now has BHM as the logo, and, you know, Uber Eats is saying, you know, for the month of February, all of the Black owned businesses are going to be on the page, or YouTube having a Black catalog for only this month. Like, how do you guys feel when brands do these things that are for Black people on Black History Month, but then it kind of disappears afterwards? So that's not really their consistent energy. Like, how do you guys feel about that? And then even you, Prince, I guess more specifically for you, we can wrap up. As a Black owned business, do you feel like you want to be highlighted during this month? How do you feel? Do you feel the pressure to do something for Black people? And, you know, it's kind of funny because you're probably going to go into the idea of a Black owned business, but you being a Black person who owns a business, how do you feel about that? I guess we could start with you.
Oh, start with me?
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think people need to. So let's start with that last. I'm going to go backwards. So as far as being a Black owned business, or a Black person that owns a business, I think that there is you know, it's funny. I just saw someone post on Twitter. What's this guy's name? Is it Sir Henry? And he kind of took he was like, you know, I'm tired of being asked what it's like to be a Black business owner. How about I'm just a business owner that's Black? I don't know if I take that stance fully, right? I do think that there is some value to Black people to see for kids and stuff to be inspired by someone that looks like them to reach towards those type of heights. I do think that as Black people, we need to stop. I think, you know, we need to work on not necessarily needing to see someone in our skin color doing something to feel like we can do it. But I think we just lost JoJo.
Yeah, we lost JoJo. She's gonna probably hop back in there.
There she goes. Yep. Okay.
But
I feel like so I think there's something that we need to work on with that. But you know, for me, I look at myself as a business owner, and I am Black, right? I don't think that I'll never try to, nor can I ever hide the fact that I'm Black. So I don't know how much I need to state Black business owner at all. I think it's more powerful sometimes. I think sometimes less is more. I think sometimes that if I just show up and say, hey, I'm the owner, I think that that's more profound. Anybody who's shocked by that, you know, take that on as information for you.
Yeah, that has more an effect than me saying like, oh, I'm this Black business owner.
Yeah, because I also, on a day-to-day basis, I don't hold myself to the standard of a Black business. I hold myself to the standard of business.
Yeah.
To the standard of, so that's me. That's me. I feel like if I say, oh, I'm not a lot of Black people, you know, it's less likely for a Black person to own a business. So I should just be proud having a small business. That's not how I approach it. I don't think I've gotten as far as I have thinking like that. And I don't think I'll get as far, you know, I plan to go further in terms of growing the business. So that's my thing. I don't like small thinking. I don't like the idea of give me credit for something that, because I'm Black. But I do think, again, I don't want to hide it. If someone wants to give me accolades and say, and I do an article like Black owned businesses, and they want to shine light on it for the macro vision of what's going on in America, yes, I'll talk to you. Yes, I'll talk to you about it. I love it. And I'm running on here. I think you need to be careful. I think, you know, like anything else, people, especially in a capitalist society, people will always try to capitalize on anything that can help them. And I think, unfortunately, there's people who don't believe in certain things that they go, it's Black History Month. We'll get more attraction and more traffic if we play into that trending topic, so to speak. And for example, I was getting some food from Uber Eats. I think Jen might have screenshotted you this.
Yeah.
Seamless. And I guess we wanted to order Cuban food, right? Or her sister, and they wanted to order Cuban food. This is this month. How are we eating Cuban? Or you guys are getting Cuban? Oh, it's clean. I'm like, I want a meal plan. Anyway, so
now you see
I ate clean. So it was I wanted Cuban specifically. So I could just get like a salad and some chicken or whatever, right? So we wanted Cuban food. We had decided we're getting Cuban food. So she goes on the app and was like, would you like to order from a Black owned business for Black History Month? And she was like, I have to write no. She was like, can you click no? Because she felt funny because Jen's white. She's like, clicking, can you click no? Because I can't. It's crazy. That's crazy. I just feel like that's the kind of stuff like when you force. I don't think we should be forcing people to be complying with certain stuff. But I think, you know, it's more funny than anything else. But I think people should be I don't know. I think some things like that, like there's just some things that are more awkward than anything else. Like, don't help me because it's the thing to do. Help, support what you want to support.
Exactly.
I think it's good. Okay, so I don't think there should be a question on do you want to order from this place? That's where I'm like, no.
Right.
I think there can be a category for it for food places, because a lot of people do want to support, especially food restaurants right now that are Black owned, and they don't know, there's not necessarily until this past year a list to know who owns what. But I think on the larger scheme of capitalism, in terms of like big brands, that's where it gets a little fuzzy. That's where you're like, it's disingenuous. At least with Uber Eats, even though there's a small portion, you still see like, okay, now I can see the list of all the Black owned restaurants, and it's still that Black owned restaurant. Uber doesn't own that restaurant. Now, when we're talking about Nike, we're talking about all these big brands. That's where it gets fuzzy. And you're like, okay, so now we're going to highlight all these Black athletes and Black people and have all Black models for this 1 month of the campaign. And they're not consistent for the rest of the year. That's where, and I'm not speaking just Nike specifically, I'm just talking about in general, big name brands that never included. But then it gets confusing, because then you're like, are they going to be patronized for finally being including us? And then they're like, well, I can't do anything right now. But it's like, if the test is, if this lasts after Black History Month, if Black Lives Matters goes away, then everything is going to like reveal itself.
Yeah, right. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I definitely feel like, so, because I asked my roommate this, and he kind of gave me some perspective. He was like, things can be like performative, but also help Black people at the same time. Right. So like, I do believe what Uber Eats did was very performative. I don't think they really care about Black business that much. I think they knew that, this would make us look good, but at the same time, that genuinely probably did help some Black businesses. Right. People like me, who's like, if to be honest, if I see something that I like and I find out a Black person owns it, if I was thinking about buying it, I'd probably buy it. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just the type of person I am. So for people like me out there, they might want to see that stuff. But I do feel like these companies kind of capitalize on us. And it's like, it's kind of like we can't stop it, because it's like we do kind of feed into it. Like when YouTube has the Black History Month catalog, and Nike does the all Black models, we kind of eat it up. But it's not, I do think it's very performative. Yeah. In the end, it may help some Black people, but to Erica's point, it's not consistent. My rule of thumb is, especially when I'm trying to do something, if my level of activism or help cannot be consistent, then I'm probably not gonna do it. Especially if it's not making a huge change. Like, because then to me, it seems like you're capitalizing on the issue, especially if it's like a thing that's a month, or like, next month is Women's History Month.
Yeah. It's different if you're doing, like, if it's an educational tool and you're doing, like, let me read a book by a Black author every day for this month, or on a subject that you're educating yourself, it's gonna, you might take that specific time of the month every year. Different than you paying a certain amount for this company, blah, 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 because you saw a Black person in the sweater, you saw a Black person in the shoes. Oh, they're highlighting this, so they're doing their part, so now I'm gonna put my money here. I think that's different. And I also think it's different for Black-owned businesses in general, because a lot of these businesses that are capitalizing on Black History Month are not necessarily Black-owned,
Exactly.
And Uber Eats, I'll just order through the restaurant next time. Thank you for telling me that they're Black-owned, and now I'm directly through their
power move.
Take away the profit that you're getting off. And then also with Black-owned businesses, like even with gyms, just like what Prince said, he doesn't want to necessarily market himself all the time as a Black-owned business. It doesn't need to always be said. But sometimes even for other Black people that come here, they're like it does set us apart to a certain extent of other Black people, or even other white people feeling comfortable with us. They're like, oh, well, every other gym I've gone to for the last, the last 9 gyms I've gone to have all been white owned, even if their trainers or coaches are Black, and all have been, the decisions have been by white people. So, I'm going to I feel more comfortable here because of this situation, even though we don't promote it, they can already themselves discover it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys. Do you feel like the fact that brands kind of
guys, what do you mean you guys, Jojo?
Whoa!
Guys. Oh, do you feel like
Jojo, it's okay.
My bad. Do you feel like you all think that showcasing for Black History Month kind of enables this idea that whiteness is the default, or do you think that that's my question.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah, it kind of does. It definitely. The answer is yes.
Exactly. Just like you said, it's like, because I saw this one time, this Kanye interview, and he was like, I hate when I'm in a magazine or I'm something and people call me a black artist. It's like, I am an artist. I'm black and I'm better than a lot of you, but you saying black artist is making it seem like I'm an artist. He's a great artist despite the fact he's black.
Right.
Owner despite the fact that he's black. For Black History Month, let's show these black people, because you want to know what? We're not going to see them for the rest of the year. So let's show them off.
I had a friend that did that. I had a friend that posted me. It's crazy. When I first opened the gym, he said support. He said, shout out to my friend. He owns a gym and he's He's a successful businessman and he's black. And I was like, and he was saying, he posted that to be inspirational to like black kids and stuff. And I was like, subconsciously, you just told him it's hard to become a business owner because you're black and he's the anomaly. That's what you said, right? Yeah. So the objective was to say he's successful and he's black. Like, look at this. This is a great, your intention was to say, look, you can do it. Look, he's black. But what your with the brain, because what you're saying factually is that he's successful and he's black means despite he's fat, he's black, despite that he's black, which means that it's hard to make. If I didn't know anything, if I was a kid and I didn't know anything, I'm like, oh snap, it must be hard to be a business owner.
But you're trying to prove the point of maybe to other black people, like, oh, this is an example, like this is possible. Like it's a tough. It's hard to.
And it's crazy. You know, it's funny. I just said in the beginning of this podcast that I don't like the word normalize, but I feel like if you don't, this is the opposite of normalizing, right? Like in my head, we don't need to say normalize, but it's like, just let it rock. Let's go.
Yeah.
You see me? What's up? I can show you how to do it. Let's go. Like, we don't need to be like, don't, because it's almost counterproductive to be like, and they're black.
Yeah.
And they're a woman. Like, it's like you said, it's strong for a woman. Come on, chill. She's strong.
But I think still nothing wrong with some people choosing to support just black businesses right now, especially as a way of overcorrecting, never noticing.
Yeah, I'm not anti support black businesses because there's a disparity. I do, like, if whoever want to help me, I'm not going to turn away a helping hand.
Right.
Yeah, I'm
also not looking for it.
Exactly. But you're not going to play the card, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not going to be marching saying, I'm not going to be like, yo, you need to support more. I'm going to do what I do. People that empathize with our struggles and want to, then it's due then. If you feel like that,
sometimes it comes naturally. It will come naturally with a lot of clients that walk in here. Like they don't, it comes from them wanting to be here and wanting to support everyone here.
Right.
I've heard that like a lot of, sorry.
Go, Jojo.
No, you can go, but just after this, we should probably wrap up because we're getting on the 2-hour mark. So
crazy.
Okay.
Part 1 and part 2 for sure.
No, I was just gonna say that I've heard like a lot of people just say that kind of this whole idea of like saying things like black issues or like Black History Month or black owned business kind of homogenizes black people, and like it's a way of like grouping all black people into the same kind of category, which is like dehumanizing because it means that there's no individuality. Like white people, because we're the default, we get to be, you don't hear white owned business. You hear like fast food restaurant, or you hear like Italian restaurant, or you hear like, or we get all these different categories instead of just like white people. You don't really hear. I
could go on forever about this too, because I have an opinion that's not popular with a lot of people that I grew up with that are black. I grew up. Since I was a kid, and I didn't like the idea of black. I didn't like BET. I didn't like the idea of BET. Like I was thankful to have it, but I didn't like the idea of what it said about. I think it just. I know why BET. I'm not ignorant of why BET is Black Entertainment Television. You guys know that, right?
Yeah.
So
we're looking at you like.
Yeah.
That's what me and Noble are like. Where's it?
So you know who got canceled? We're supposed to talk about cancel culture. I'm not gonna go into it, but was it Stacey Dash? I don't know if you guys remember. She got canceled because she said we shouldn't have a BET, we shouldn't have Black History Month. A few black people, I think Morgan Freeman has said that too.
Yeah. And he got I agree with her with that, but she has a lot of other
other opinions that have led people to want to cancel her because of the other things she has said.
It's like Kanye said some good stuff, but then he just trumped it with all.
Like it's not just out of nowhere, that, especially as a Black person, we don't just cancel another Black person out of nowhere. They have had to have done a couple of other things, especially if they played a part in it first.
Like Erica said, we give Black people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, but JoJo's hitting on something really big,
it was
though.
on BT, so that's why it gets more frustrating for her to.
Yeah, there's like there's a mixed message though in terms of what we say we want. We want to be seen as separate, but we also need to come together, right? And that's where I think a lot of us, that's where we need to work on that as a community.
That's why I feel like we need to talk to each other. I mean, I think all in all, this is a topic that has been spoken about many times, but even you, Prince, I kind of feel like you sense that it was a different discussion than a lot of people have, because we usually do just get the white opinion or just these other opinions. I feel like everything that we touched upon was very diverse. I mean, we had two different Black male perspectives. We had a Black woman perspective. We had a white woman perspective, who's probably different than every white woman perspective in America. So I think this total episode added a lot of value because we just have a lot of different opinions, and
I loved it. We went on, but I loved it.
Yeah, I think this is valuable. I've seen 3-hour podcasts. I think people are going to be able to listen to this. They're like, where we going? Definitely stay tuned for our next episode. We're going to be releasing these weekly. And yeah, is there anything else you want to say, Prince, to close it out?
No, I just want to kind of close it out with what we started with, was that quote from Coretta Scott King, which is, hate is too great a burden to bear. Hate does more damage to the hater than it does to the hated. And I really stand by that. I really think that whenever you're trying to solve a problem, I don't think hate will ever solve a problem. I don't even think hate will solve hate. My message is that we are stronger together, that even if you can't come to agree with somebody, demonizing and making someone feel like they're lesser than doesn't solve. It's the wrong message to send to somebody who may be doing the wrong thing. We need to come up with effective ways. And I think the best way to come up with effective solutions is to step outside of our own bias, step outside of our own emotions, which is tough, and try to come up with a solution. But that's the way we handle business. That's the way we handle anything that really gets done in this world that's done well. We remove our own personal emotions, and we come up with an objective view, and then we make effective decisions to move forward. I think we need to do that more. There's too much heightened radical conversations that aren't really making anything happen. And the people who want us to hate each other, men, women, Black, white, whatever you call it, they're winning because of, I don't know if it's on purpose, the radicalization of splitting something into two is a great way to just walk away and let people fight, and have what you want go on. So that goes on a lot because our feelings are so strong. We just need to become more aware of the fact that we just need to not allow ourselves to ever become hateful, no matter what. That's my last message.
Very powerful. So yeah, you heard Prince. This topic was very heavy. We can go on forever, but I'm glad we got to touch on it, and look forward to be touching on more topics. Definitely in the comments when this is on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music. Definitely let us know if there's any topics that you want us to expound upon from this that we can probably speak about more. And we'll see you next week on Trooper Mentality.
All we know is go.
Thanks, guys.
All we know. So thank you, and thank you to our guests for coming.
Yeah,
Special shout out to
thank you guys. You guys are awesome.
Thank you for having us.